There is a crow in your neighborhood right now that remembers your face. Not the way a stranger remembers a face for an hour. Not the way you remember the face of someone you passed in a grocery store last week. The way you remember the face of someone who hurt you in 3rd grade. Permanently. Specifically. With detail you did not know you were storing. For the last 15 years, researchers at the University of Washington and at Cornell have been conducting some of the strangest experiments in modern animal cognition. They have proved, beyond reasonable scientific doubt, that American crows recognize individual human faces, hold those memories for years, and pass the information about specific humans to their offspring and to other crows in their local population. Most people assume the crow watching them from a telephone pole is just another bird. Generic. Replaceable. The same crow they saw yesterday and the day before that. The truth is far more specific, far more personal, and far stranger than most people realize. There is something a crow remembers about a person who has fed it that goes beyond food. There is a behavior crows perform that researchers initially mistook for accident and only realized was deliberate after years of repeated documentation. And there is something a crow that knows you may have placed in your yard that you have walked past without noticing. Welcome back to Birds Are Watching. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. Stay until the end. What crows have decided to do with the memory of the people who feed them is the part of this story you will not forget, and it is the part of the science the public discussion has barely touched. Tonight, we are going into the memory, the peer-reviewed, decades-long research on what American crows actually remember about the humans in their lives, and what they have chosen to do about it. Number 1. The face you cannot disguise. The first thing a crow remembers about you is your face. Not your clothes, not your hat, not the bag you carry to the feeder. Your face. In 2008, John Marsloff and his team at the University of Washington began a series of experiments that would become foundational to the science of animal facial recognition. The researchers wore specific masks while capturing wild crows on the Seattle campus and act crows' experience as a significant threat. For years afterward, the crows on that campus would scold, dive bomb, and aggressively mob anyone wearing the same mask. Regardless of who was wearing it, the crows had not learned to fear the people. They had learned to fear the face. Subsequent studies, published in Animal Behavior and the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, have refined the finding. Crows can distinguish between human faces with accuracy researchers have measured at over 95% across multiple trials. They retain those memories for at least 5 years. The limit of most longitudinal studies, and the actual ceiling is unknown because the studies have not yet run long enough to find it. When you walk out to your feeder tomorrow morning, the crow watching you from across the street is not seeing a person, it is seeing you. If you have lived in the same house for a decade, the crow in the tree at the corner has built a face record of you that goes back further than most relationships in your life. Number 2. The category they have filed you under. The second thing a crow remembers is what kind of human you are. Not your name, not your job, not your story. A binary, safe or dangerous. The University of Washington research has demonstrated that crows do not just remember faces. They categorize them. Once a face has been associated with a positive experience, food, calm presence, predictable behavior, the crow files that face under a specific behavioral category and treats every future encounter with that face accordingly. Once a face has been associated with threat, the same filing happens in the opposite direction. What is striking is how durable the categorization is. In studies where researchers fed crows from a marked location for several months and then stopped, the crows continued to approach and treat the researchers as safe for years after the feeding ended, not because they expected food, because they had been filed as safe humans, and the file did not expire. If you have ever fed the crows in your neighborhood, even briefly, even years ago, the crows that benefited from that feeding may still have you classified as a positive entity. They are not waiting for the food to come back. They have just decided that you specifically are one of the humans that does not need to be feared. Number 3. The information they have shared about you. The third thing crows do with memory is share it. This is the finding that surprised researchers more than any other, because no one expected the social transmission of human identification to operate at the level it does. In follow-up experiments at the University of Washington, Marsloff and his team documented that crows who had never personally interacted with a threatening human began displaying avoidance behavior toward that specific person because they had watched other crows react. The information about a dangerous face had spread through the local crow population without direct experience. Subsequent research, including studies published in Animal Cognition, has documented that this transmission happens in multiple directions. Juvenile crows learn the human identifications of adult crows. Mated pairs share information about humans they have each encountered separately. Crows from neighboring territories pick up information through alarm calls and mobbing behavior that lets them recognize specific humans they have not personally seen mistreat anyone. What this means for you, if you have ever fed a single crow consistently, is that the surrounding crow population almost certainly knows the crow in your yard tomorrow morning, even if you have never personally fed it, may be operating on inherited or transmitted information about who you are. The reputation you have with one crow is rarely held only by that crow. It is distributed across a network of birds that communicate about specific humans with the precision researchers are still mapping. Number 4. The face they remember from before they were born. The fourth thing crows remember is something that should not, by any standard understanding of memory, be possible. In long-term studies, Marsloff's team documented that crows who had not been hatched when the original massed researcher experiments took place still recognized and mobbed the threatening face when they encountered it years later. The crows had inherited the threat identification from their parents. The mechanism is not genetic memory. The information is passed culturally through repeated exposure to the threatening human while accompanied by adult alarm behavior. The young crows learn to associate the specific face with danger before they have any personal encounter with it. What the University of Washington documented is the equivalent, in cognitive terms, of a small child being able to recognize and avoid a face their parents reacted to before the child can speak. In American crow populations near suburban yards, this means something extraordinary. A crow hatched this spring that has never personally interacted with you may already know what category to file you under. If you have fed crows in your yard for 10 years, the new generation of crows in your neighborhood was raised, in part, on knowledge of you. You have a reputation you did not consciously build, in a species whose memory of you predates the individual bird now watching you. Number 5. The objects they have left near your house. The fifth thing crows remember is harder to categorize. The research community is still working through what to call it. What it looks like, on the ground, is gift-giving. Long-term observations of crows in suburban environments, most famously documented in a series of accounts from Seattle that ultimately led to research articles in Animal Behavior and to international press coverage, have established that some crows, in some yards, with some specific humans, will repeatedly leave objects at the location where they receive food. The objects vary: small stones, pieces of glass, buttons, bits of bone, a twist of wire, a broken piece of jewelry. The objects are not randomly distributed. They are placed, often at the precise location where the human stands to fill the feeder, sometimes in a small, intentional grouping, sometimes one at a time, over weeks or months. Whether this represents what humans would call gift-giving and offering, in exchange, a deliberate act of reciprocity, is a question researchers have not yet definitively answered. What is not in question is that the behavior is intentional, that it is specific to particular humans, and that it occurs in the context of a remembered, sustained feeding relationship. If you have ever found an odd object near where you feed the birds in your yard, a small stone that did not belong on the patio, a piece of foil at the base of the feeder, a button on the windowsill, and dismissed it as random, I want you to reconsider. You may have been given something by a memory you did not know was operating. But what comes next is the part of the crow research I think most people have never been told. And it is what changes the meaning of all of it. Number 6. What they have decided to do with the memory. I want you to think about something for a moment. Across everything the science has documented the facial recognition, the behavioral categorization, the social transmission, the inherited identification, the unexplained object leaving. There is one element of the research that the public discussion almost never addresses. The memory is not the endpoint. Memory is just storage. What matters in any cognitive system is what is done with the stored information. What the University of Washington and Cornell studies have collectively documented is that crows who have remembered specific humans for years do not just remember them, they choose to continue interacting with them. The crows that have you filed as safe are not obligated to return to your yard. They have thousands of square miles of foraging territory available to them. They could feed anywhere in your county. They could move on. They have not. Every day a crow in your neighborhood comes back to your yard, not to the feeder, not for food, just to land on a wire near your house and watch you walk to the mailbox. That crow is making a choice. The memory of you exists in the bird's mind. The choice to act on that memory, day after day, is something else. It is a decision, made repeatedly, renewed every morning. Crow that has remembered you for 5 years is a crow that has decided, 5 years in a row, every day, that you are worth coming back to. That is not memory. That is loyalty. It is the same word humans use when they describe what dogs do, what old friends do, what family does. And it is happening, quietly, in the trees above your yard, in a species most American homeowners regard as background. The next time a crow looks at you from a fence post or a telephone wire and holds your gaze for longer than a passing animal should, remember what you now know. You are not being watched, you are being chosen, not because you fed it, not because you put out seed last week, but because, somewhere across however many years you have lived in that yard, you became someone a wild animal decided to keep returning to find. The crow has remembered you. The crow has also decided that the memory is worth maintaining. That decision is renewed every morning, including this one. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a crow, a raven, or a jay that seemed to know you specifically? A bird that showed up when you were outside, that watched you from the same spot, that reappeared after years apart? Tell me about it. What bird was it? How long has it been going on? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.